When the fire inside feels dim? When the drive that once pushed you forward begins to fade? What do you do? That's the question that separates those who stay stuck from those who rise. Motivation isn't always there, but discipline, action, and belief must carry you when it's gone. Today, I'm going to give you the blueprint, the exact actions to take when motivation is low, so you never stop moving forward. Let's get it. Discipline over emotion is one of the most powerful principles you can live by when motivation is low, because emotions are fleeting, temporary, and often misleading, while discipline is permanent, structured, and reliable. Most people wait till they feel good, until they feel inspired, until they feel motivated to take action. But that mindset creates inconsistency, and inconsistency is the killer of progress. Motivation comes and goes like waves on the ocean. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. But discipline is the anchor that keeps you steady when everything inside you is screaming to quit. When you base your actions on how you feel, you give away control to your moods, your environment, your circumstances. But when you act out of discipline, you take control back and you decide your future instead of letting your feelings decide for you. Think about the mornings when the alarm clock rings and your body says no. Your mind says sleep a little longer, and your emotions pull you toward comfort. That moment is not about motivation, it's about discipline. You can't build greatness on comfort, you can't build strength on ease, and you can't build a life of purpose by only moving when you feel like it. Champions, leaders, and warriors all share one trait. They move whether they feel like it or not. They understand that the body may resist, the mind may complain, but discipline doesn't ask for permission, it commands action. Discipline is about showing up every single day, regardless of your internal weather. When the storm of doubt hits, discipline is the umbrella that keeps you moving. When fatigue settles in and whispers excuses in your ear, discipline drowns out the noise with the voice of consistency. Motivation is an emotion, and emotions are not stable. One day you may feel unstoppable, the next day you feel like giving up. If you live by those feelings, your progress will look exactly the same, up and down, inconsistent, unpredictable. But when you commit to discipline, you set a standard that does not change with your moods. You create a system that guarantees progress, because discipline does not negotiate. There's a truth about emotions that people often ignore. Emotions are not designed to guide your destiny. They're designed to inform you of your current state. Anger, sadness, fatigue, excitement, joy, these feelings rise and fall. They provide signals, but they should not become the driver. If you let emotions drive, you'll constantly be rewriting, constantly starting over, constantly making excuses. Discipline is the map that keeps you on course no matter how the weather looks. Discipline allows you to work when you are tired, to focus when you are distracted, to push when you are drained, because it's not about how you feel, it's about what you committed to do. The real test of discipline comes in silence, in solitude, in those moments where nobody is watching. It's easy to move when the crowd is cheering, when the spotlight is on, when everyone expects you to perform. But when the room is empty, when no applause exists, when it's just you against your inner voice, that's where discipline separates the ordinary from the extraordinary. Discipline whispers in that quiet space, do it anyway, show up anyway, push anyway. It doesn't care if you're inspired or not. It doesn't care if the conditions are perfect or not. Discipline knows that greatness is built on the days you least feel like showing up, because those are the days that shape character, that forge resilience, that strengthen willpower. Every person who has achieved something significant in life has leaned on discipline more than motivation. Athletes training in the cold before sunrise don't rely on motivation, they rely on discipline. Entrepreneurs grinding when the profits are not yet visible don't lean on motivation, they lean on discipline. Parents providing for their families when they're exhausted don't act because they're motivated, they act because they're disciplined. Motivation is a spark, discipline is the engine. The spark gets you started, but without the engine, you go nowhere. Too many people chase sparks, but sparks fade, engines keep moving. Discipline is also freedom. Most people confuse discipline with restriction, as if discipline takes away your freedom. The truth is, without discipline, you become a slave to your emotions, a slave to procrastination, a slave to excuses. With discipline, you create habits that build momentum. And momentum frees you from constantly debating with yourself. You no longer waste energy on deciding whether you should or shouldn't act. You just act because that's who you are. That's what discipline does. It transforms actions into identity. You stop saying, I'll try to work out, and instead you become the person who works out. You stop saying, I'll try to be productive, and you become the person who is productive. Discipline shapes identity, and identity shapes destiny. The problem with living on emotion is that it convinces you to take the easy road in the moment, but it never cares about the long-term consequence. Emotion says, eat the junk food, skip the workout, procrastinate on the project, stay in the comfort zone. Emotion chases relief, not results. Discipline, on the other hand, says, do what needs to be done, not what feels good. Discipline doesn't care if you're tired, if you're not in the mood, if it's inconvenient. Discipline sees the bigger picture, the future you're building, the dream you're chasing. Every time you choose discipline over emotion, you cast a vote for the future version of yourself. Imagine two versions of your life playing out. One where you follow emotion up today, down tomorrow, consistent only in inconsistency. Another where you follow discipline steady, relentless, inch by inch, day by day. Which version do you think wins? Which version creates strength, builds wealth, earns respect, and leaves a legacy? Emotion may give you comfort today, but discipline gives you victory tomorrow. The greatest obstacle you'll face in applying discipline over emotion is the inner voice that argues with you. That voice is powerful, it's persuasive, it knows exactly what to say to get you to stop. It tells you you've done enough. You've worked hard, you deserve rest. You'll start tomorrow, one day will matter. That voice is emotion dressed up as reason. Discipline is the counter voice, the one that says one day does matter. That consistency is built in moments just like this, that if you give in once, you open the door to giving in again. Discipline trains you to recognize the tricks of emotion and to act anyway. Discipline requires sacrifice, but every sacrifice is an investment. Waking up early is a sacrifice, but it invests in productivity. Eating clean is a sacrifice, but it invests in health. Saving money is a sacrifice, but it invests in financial security. Practicing when others rest is a sacrifice, but it invests in mastery. Emotion seeks pleasure now, discipline seeks fulfillment later. Which one do you think builds a life worth living? The truth is, when motivation fades, most people stop, and that's why so few succeed. The world is full of people who start strong and quit early, but the ones who keep going, the ones who rise to the top, are the ones who master discipline over emotion. They don't wait for motivation to arrive, they act without it. They know that progress is the result of consistency, and consistency comes from discipline. Every time they act without feeling like it, they gain an advantage over everyone who waits for the perfect moment. Small wins create momentum because progress fuels progress, and the smallest steps forward carry more power than waiting endlessly for giant leaps. Most people stall because they believe transformation must happen all at once, that success is about sudden breakthroughs and monumental actions. But the truth is that real change is built brick by brick, action by action, day by day. Momentum doesn't arrive in a single explosive moment. It is crafted from repeated victories, no matter how small. Each win is a deposit of your confidence, and confidence multiplies with action. When you celebrate small wins, you are training your brain to associate effort with reward, which makes you more likely to keep going even when the road feels long and heavy. Think about pushing a car that's stuck. At first, the effort feels unbearable. You lean in with everything you've got and the vehicle barely moves. But then it begins to shift an inch, then another, until the wheels start rolling. Once it's moving, you don't need the same level of force. You just need to keep applying steady pressure. That's what small wins do. They give you enough movement to escape inertia, and once you're moving, momentum takes over. The hardest part of any journey is not the middle or the end. It's the start. And the start becomes possible when you set your focus on small victory instead of overwhelming yourself with the entire mountain. Small wins matter because they are achievable, and achievement builds identity. When you complete a small task, no matter how insignificant it may look, you prove to yourself that you can follow through. That proof changes how you see yourself. You're no longer someone who says, I'll try, or maybe later. You're someone who finishes, and once you become someone who finishes, the size of the task doesn't matter anymore. You've trained your mind to connect action with completion. That identity shift is the root of momentum. The snowball effect begins when you let small wins accumulate until they transform into massive results. The brain thrives on completion. There is a psychological principle known as the Zeigarnik effect, which suggests that unfinished tasks occupy mental space and create tension until they are resolved. When you leave things incomplete, your brain drags the weight of that open loop everywhere you go. But when you secure a small win, you close the loop. You release the tension and your brain rewards you with a sense of accomplishment. That reward is not just emotional, it's chemical. Your brain releases dopamine, a neurotransmitter tied to motivation and reward every time you complete something. That chemical signal makes you want to repeat the behavior. This is why small wins are powerful. They don't just move you forward externally, they rewire you internally. Momentum from small wins also destroys procrastination. Procrastination feeds on the illusion that tasks are too big, too heavy, too far away to tackle right now. But when you break the task down into smaller pieces and complete just one, procrastination loses its grip. You no longer need to climb the mountain today. You just need to take the first step. And when you take that step, you immediately feel lighter because action destroys the paralysis of overthinking. Procrastination thrives in thought, but it starves in action. A small win shifts you from thinking to moving. And once you're moving, you can't stay stuck in the same place. Consider how athletes train. No one walks into a gym and lifts the heaviest weight on the first day. They start small with manageable resistance. And over time, they build strength. Every rep, every set, every training session is a small win. Eventually, those small wins accumulate into visible muscle, greater stamina, and record-breaking performances. The principle is the same in every area of life. You build strength in business by securing one client at a time. You build health by choosing one healthy meal at a time. You build knowledge by reading one page at a time. You build financial freedom by saving $1 at a time. Small wins compound, and compounding is unstoppable when you give it time. Momentum also creates belief. When you're at the bottom, staring at the full distance between where you are and where you want to be, belief feels fragile. You doubt if you can ever get there. But when you stack small wins, those doubts begin to shrink because you now have evidence that progress is happening. Evidence kills doubt. Every win, no matter how small, is proof that you are capable, proof that the process works, proof that the future you want is not just an illusion, but a reality you are constructing step by step. Belief is not built in speeches, it's built in progress. You can't talk yourself into confidence, but you can act yourself into it by accumulating wins. Momentum is also contagious. One area of progress creates energy that spills into others. When you secure a small win in your fitness, you carry that confidence into your work. When you secure a small win in your work, you carry that confidence into your relationships. When you secure a small win in your finances, you carry that discipline into your health. Progress in one domain energizes you in all domains because momentum is a universal force. It doesn't care where it starts. It only cares that it starts. Once you ignite it in one place, it spreads like wildfire across your life. Small wins teach you patience. We live in a culture obsessed with instant gratification where everyone wants the result today, the transformation now, the reward immediately. But small wins remind you that greatness is built slowly, like a craftsman shaping a masterpiece. Every cut of the blade, every brush of paint, every note of practice is a win that accumulates into brilliance. Patience is not about waiting. It's about steady progress. Small wins teach you to value the journey instead of just the destination because you see yourself improving every single day. Momentum from small wins also protects you from discouragement. The road to any significant goal is filled with obstacles, setbacks, and failures. If your only measurement of success is the end goal, every obstacle will feel like the end of the road. But if you've built the habit of recognizing small wins, you will always find reasons to keep going. Even when the larger goal feels distant, you can still look back and see how far you've come through all the tiny victories that carried you forward. That perspective is fuel. It reminds you that progress is happening, even if the final prize is not yet in your hands. Momentum is powerful because it's exponential. The first small win feels good. The second makes you feel capable. The third convinces you that you're on a something. By the 10th, you're unstoppable. Momentum doesn't just grow, it compounds. Every win builds on the last, making the next easier to achieve. What felt impossible yesterday feels manageable today. What felt heavy last month feels light this month. The power of momentum is that it shifts effort from forced to natural. You no longer need to push as hard to move forward because your previous wins are carrying you. That's why people say success breeds success, because momentum makes the path smoother as you progress. The discipline of securing small wins daily is what transforms habits into lifestyles. A habit is an action repeated enough times to become automatic. The only way to build habits is through repetition, and the only way to sustain repetition is to lower the barrier of entry. Small wins lower that barrier. Instead of saying you need to work out for an hour, you commit to 10 minutes. Instead of saying you need to write a book, you commit to 1 page. Instead of saying you need to save a fortune, you commit to setting aside a small percentage. By lowering the resistance, you make the action sustainable, and sustainability is what creates transformation. The mistake people make is underestimating the power of small wins. They dismiss them as too minor, too insignificant, not worthy of recognition. But dismissing small wins is dismissing the foundation of success itself. Every skyscraper stands tall because countless small bricks were laid with precision. Every symphony sounds beautiful because every small note was played with care. Every championship is won because of countless small practices, small drills, small sacrifices that nobody else saw. Small wins are not the side story, they are the story. Control your environment is one of the most underestimated actions you can take when motivation is low because your surroundings are constantly shaping your thoughts, emotions, energy, and behavior, whether you realize it or not. People often assume their lack of motivation is purely internal, that it comes only from a weakness of will or a deficiency of discipline. But in truth, much of what influences your state of mind comes from the environment you allow yourself to live in. The places you spend time, the people you surround yourself with, the energy you allow into your life, and the distractions you permit are either pulling you closer to your goals or dragging you further away from them. The reason controlling your environment is so powerful is that it reduces the need for constant willpower. If your environment supports your goals, you don't need to fight against resistance all the time. If your environment is sabotaging your goals, you'll always be swimming upstream, using unnecessary energy just to stay in place. Think about it like this. A seed has the potential to become a towering tree, but only if planted in the right soil, with enough sunlight, with water and protection from weeds. The seed doesn't fail because it lacks potential. It fails because the environment doesn't allow growth. Human beings are no different. You may have all the ambition, all the intelligence, and all the talent necessary to succeed, but if your environment is toxic, negative, or full of distractions, that potential will suffocate. Control your environment and you give yourself the soil, sunlight, and water you need to thrive. Your environment is not just physical, it is also social. The people you spend time with directly influence your energy and motivation. If you surround yourself with complainers, procrastinators, and excuse makers, you will absorb their patterns. If you spend your time with people who push themselves, who are hungry, who are disciplined, you will rise to the level. Energy is contagious. Drive is contagious. Laziness is contagious. You cannot outwork the influence of your circle if you refuse to change it. This doesn't mean cutting everyone out of your life, but it does mean being intentional about who has the most access to your time and attention. Sometimes the environment you need to control is simply learning to say no more often, creating boundaries that protect your focus and your peace. Physical space plays an equally important role. A cluttered desk creates a cluttered mind. A chaotic room breeds chaotic thoughts. On the other hand, a clean, organized space signals to your brain that order exists, that there is room for clarity, that productivity is expected here. That is why athletes carefully prepare their locker rooms, why soldiers keep their gear in perfect condition, why high performers protect their workspaces. They understand that environment is not neutral. It is either working for you or against you. If your space is full of distractions, you will fight battles every time you sit down to work. If your space is designed to support your goals, you will move effortlessly toward them. Technology is another critical piece of your environment. Most people live in constant distraction because their phones and devices are filled with endless noise, alerts, and temptations. Notifications steal focus. Social media drains energy. Comparison poisons self-belief. If you allow your devices to control you, your environment is being dictated by algorithms designed to steal your attention. Taking control of your digital environment is just as important as controlling your physical one. This could mean deleting apps that waste your time, turning off notifications, creating specific times for online activity, or using tools that block distractions. The digital world is an environment that follows you everywhere. You can either let it pull you into chaos or discipline it to serve your purpose. Even sound and atmosphere matter. Music, noise, lighting, and temperature influence how your brain and body perform. High performers often use sound intentionally. Motivational speeches, instrumental music, or silence depending on the task. Lighting affects mood and energy. A dark, dim environment makes you sluggish, while natural light elevates energy. These small details are part of controlling your environment because your brain reacts to them whether you consciously notice or not. To maximize your performance, you must ask yourself, what kind of environment allows me to thrive? And once you identify it, you must create it consistently. Another layer of environment is routine and structure. The times you wake up, the places you go, the rituals you repeat, all of these shape the mental atmosphere you live in. If your mornings are chaotic, your day feels chaotic. If your mornings are structured, your day carries that order. Controlling your environment means designing rhythms that put you in the right state without relying on chance. For example, a morning routine that eliminates decision-making and sets you in motion without hesitation creates momentum before your mind even has a chance to argue. That's environment control, not just where you are, but how you structure your time within that space. When motivation is low, your environment often determines whether you act or not. Imagine trying to eat healthy while your kitchen is stocked with junk food. Imagine trying to stay disciplined while your desk is surrounded by distractions. Imagine trying to be positive while every conversation you have is with someone complaining about life. In each scenario, you're not failing because you're weak. You're failing because your environment is stacked against you. The strongest decision you can make is not just to rely on inner strength, but to build external conditions that make success the default option. Success becomes easier when your environment is aligned with your goals. Controlling your environment also means being mindful of energy leaks. These are the little things that drain your mental, emotional, and physical reserves without giving you anything in return. It could be a toxic friendship, a constant stream of bad news, a disorganized home, or even unfinished tasks that keep whispering in the back of your mind. Each of these leaks pulls away motivation until you feel depleted. When you close those leaks by setting boundaries, limiting exposure to negativity, or cleaning up what you've been avoiding, you conserve energy. That conserved energy becomes fuel for action. Environment control is not about perfection, it's about intentionality. You cannot control every circumstance, but you can control the way you set up your space, the people you choose to be around, the inputs you allow into your mind, and the routines you commit to. When you are intentional, you stop being a victim of your surroundings and start being the architect of them. Motivation may fluctuate, but an intentional environment ensures that even when you don't feel like moving, the path forward is clear and frictionless. Momentum thrives in environments designed for progress. That's why some people seem to always get things done. They've built a system where it's harder to fail than to succeed. Their fridge is full of healthy food, so they eat healthy by default. Their desk is free of distractions, so focus is natural. Their friends are ambitious, so growth is expected. Their routines are structured, so progress is automatic. They don't wait for motivation because their environment makes action the obvious choice. When you walk into a gym, you feel like working out because the environment is engineered for that purpose. When you walk into a library, you feel like reading or studying because the environment is engineered for focus. Imagine what would happen if you engineered your home, your workspace, and your social circle with the same intentionality. You wouldn't need to fight yourself every day. You wouldn't need to rely on fleeting emotions. The environment itself would carry you forward. This principle is visible in nature as well. Fish swim effortlessly because water is their environment. Birds soar because the sky is theirs. Place either of them in the wrong environment and they struggle or even die. You are no different. You must identify the environments where you thrive and commit to building more of them in your life. If you thrive in quiet, create quiet. If you thrive in order, create order. If you thrive in challenge, surround yourself with challenges. If you thrive in growth, immerse yourself in people's spaces and routines that demand it from you. The mistake most people make is trying to build discipline while ignoring their environment. They think willpower alone will carry them through, but willpower is like a battery. It runs out. Environment is like a charging station. It replenishes energy instead of draining it. If you're constantly relying on willpower while living in a toxic or distracting environment, you will eventually burn out. If you design your environment wisely, you won't need to force discipline because the path of least resistance will already align with your goals. The truth is when motivation is low, the environment often decides your actions before you consciously do. If your couch is more inviting than your workout space, you will sit. If your phone is closer than your book, you will scroll. If your negative friend calls before your ambitious one, you will complain. But if your workout clothes are laid out and ready, you'll move. If your book is open on your desk, you'll read. If your ambitious friend texts you first, you'll rise to their energy. Control your environment and you control the default direction of your life. Feed your mind daily because what you consume consistently becomes who you are, and your thoughts shape your actions long before your actions shape your reality. Motivation does not live in a vacuum. It grows from the soil of your mind, and the quality of that soil depends entirely on what you plant in it every single day. If you fill your mind with negativity, gossip, excuses, and distractions, you will carry that energy in every choice you make. If you fill your mind with wisdom, truth, discipline, vision, you will carry that energy into every step you take. The mind is like a furnace. It burns what you feed it. If you feed it trash, it produces smoke and ashes. If you feed it fuel, it produces fire. When motivation feels low, the first thing you must examine is not your drive, but your diet. Not the food you eat for your body, but the content you consume for your mind. Every day, you are either programming yourself to move forward or programming yourself to stand still. The books you read, the podcasts you listen to, the conversations you allow, the images you scroll past, the videos you watch, they are all input, and input creates output. If your input is weak, your output will be weak. You cannot expect clarity, strength, and motivation to pour out of you if confusion, chaos, and distraction are being poured into you. The world is designed to flood your mind with noise, fear, with scarcity, with messages that tell you to quit, to settle, to stop trying. If you do not intentionally feed your mind something greater every single day, you will be swept away in the flood. Think about the strongest athletes, leaders, and warriors. They are not just physically trained, they are mentally trained. They study strategies, they replay game film, they visualize victories, they absorb wisdom from coaches, mentors, and books. Their physical dominance is built on the foundation of mental nourishment. You cannot out-train a weak mind. You cannot out-discipline a mind that is starving for direction. Feeding your mind daily is how you sharpen your vision, how you fortify your belief, how you sustain your energy when external motivation disappears. Feeding your mind daily also keeps your focus aligned with your goals. The human mind is like a compass, but the needle can be easily thrown off by distractions, temptations, and negative influences. If you are not actively recalibrating it, you will find yourself lost, wandering in circles, chasing things that don't matter. When you read something empowering, listen to wisdom, or reflect on lessons that inspire you, you are realigning your compass towards your true north. That recalibration is not permanent. It must happen every single day. Just as your body requires food every day, your mind requires fuel every day. Skipping one meal may not ruin your health, but skipping enough will leave you weak. Skipping one day of mental nourishment may not ruin your life, but skip enough will leave you directionless, uninspired, and empty. What you feed your mind also determines how you respond to adversity. Life will throw setbacks, obstacles, and disappointments at you, and your response will depend entirely on the strength of your mindset. If your mind has been fed with weakness, you will collapse under pressure. If your mind has been fed with strength, you will rise under pressure. Feeding your mind with resilience, building content with stories of people who endured, with lessons about grit and determination, conditions you to respond with power instead of defeat. Adversity is not a question of if, but when. By feeding your mind daily, you prepare yourself to meet it with the right spirit. Your environment play feeding your mind, but the responsibility ultimately falls on you. You must choose what you allow to enter. That means guarding your time, filtering your inputs, and seeking out content that uplifts rather than content that distracts. It might mean replacing 30 minutes of scrolling with 30 minutes of reading. It might mean replacing gossip-filled conversations with meaningful discussions. It might mean turning off the television and turning on an audiobook that pushes you toward growth. These are small decisions, but they create massive differences in your long-term trajectory. You are not just what you eat, you are what you consume in every form. Feeding your mind daily builds consistency because it eliminates the need to restart over and over again. Most people experience cycles of motivation because they neglect their minds until they feel empty, and then they go searching for something to reignite them. But if you feed your mind daily, you never allow the tank to run empty in the first place. You stay filled, not overfilled, but just enough to keep moving, just enough to keep burning. This steady supply of mental nourishment creates a flow state where action feels natural, where energy feels available, where motivation doesn't need to be forced. There's a saying, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. The same is true for the 5 messages you consume the most, the 5 ideas you revisit the most, the 5 voices you allow to dominate your day. If you constantly hear doubt, fear, and limitation, you will unconsciously adopt them. If you constantly hear belief, courage, and possibility, you will unconsciously absorb them. Feeding your mind daily is about surrounding yourself with voices that lift you higher, voices that remind you who you are, voices that call you to keep moving forward when your own voice tries to talk you out of it. Feeding your mind daily also fuels creativity. When your mind is constantly exposed to new ideas, stories, and perspectives, it becomes fertile ground for innovation. You begin to see connections others miss. You begin to generate solutions others overlook. Creativity is not born out of emptiness. It is born out of abundance. By feeding your mind consistently, you are stocking the shelves of your imagination, giving yourself resources to draw from when challenges arise. Without that, you become stuck, recycling the same limited ideas, unable to break through barriers. Creativity thrives on nourishment. The quality of your decisions also depends on how well you feed your mind. Every day you are faced with choices that either pull you closer to your goals or push you further away. Those choices often happen in seconds, and you cannot stop to research or reflect deeply on each one. You act from the mental framework you have already built. If your mind has been fed with wisdom, principles, and discipline, your decisions will reflect that. If your mind has been starved or poisoned with negativity, your decisions will reflect that as well. Feeding your mind daily ensures that when the moment of choice arrives, you are equipped to respond with strength instead of weakness. When motivation is low, feeding your mind daily also reignites belief. Belief is fragile. It can be built or destroyed based on what you expose yourself to. If you are always listening to stories of failure, if you are constantly consuming content that convinces you the world is hopeless, belief will wither. If you are listening to stories of victory, if you are consuming examples of resilience, if you are learning from people who overcame impossible odds, belief will grow. Belief is not built once. It is built again and again every day. And feeding your mind is how you build it. It is also important to understand that feeding your mind daily is not always about motivation in the traditional sense. Sometimes it is about clarity. Sometimes it is about reminding yourself of your values. Sometimes it is about grounding yourself in truth. Motivation is only one part of the equation. Feeding your mind provides the deeper foundation upon which motivation rests. Without that foundation, motivation becomes fragile, and when it disappears, you collapse. With that foundation, even when motivation fades, you still stand because your mind has been conditioned to keep going. This practice is not complicated, but it requires discipline. 10 pages of a book, 15 minutes of a podcast, writing down 3 lessons learned, reflecting on one powerful quote. These are not monumental tasks, but they are monumental in their impact. The repetition of these simple actions creates a rhythm that transforms your perspective, your energy, and your ability to act consistently. Small doses of nourishment accumulate into massive reservoirs of strength. Feeding your mind daily also helps you recognize opportunities. When your mind is sharp and alert, you see things others miss. You recognize patterns. You notice doors opening. You seize chances that others overlook. A starved mind is blind to opportunity. A nourished mind is awake to it. Many people miss life, changing chances not because the chances weren't there, but because their minds weren't prepared to see them. Feeding your mind daily ensures that when opportunity knocks, you hear it clearly. The truth is, the world is fighting for your attention every single day. Advertisements, media, negativity, distractions, they are all competing to feed your mind. If you do not take control of that diet, the world will feed you by default, and what it feeds you will not build you, it will break you. Taking responsibility for feeding your mind daily is one of the most empowering choices you can make because it shifts you from being a consumer of noise to a creator of growth. You stop letting the world dictate what fills your mind and start deciding for yourself. Accountability builds consistency because no matter how strong you think your willpower is, human beings are not designed to thrive in isolation. We are social creatures influenced by the expectations of others, strengthened by their support, and sharpened by their standards. When motivation is low, Accountability becomes the guardrail that keeps you on the road, the invisible force that pulls you forward when you feel like slowing down, the reminder that your actions do not only affect you, but also affect the people who are watching, depending on you or walking with you. Accountability is not about weakness. It is about wisdom. It is the understanding that even the strongest champions, that even the greatest leaders have advisors, that even the most disciplined warriors fight as part of a unit. To believe you can do it all alone is to set yourself up for inconsistency, because in the moments when your emotions dip, when your energy fades, when your discipline cracks, accountability is the net that catches you and pushes you back into motion. Accountability creates consistency because it eliminates excuses. When you are only accountable to yourself, excuses are easy to justify. You can convince yourself that you will start tomorrow, that you deserve a break, that skipping this one time will not matter. But when you are accountable to someone else, a mentor, a coach, a partner, a team, those excuses lose their power. You know that someone is watching, that someone will ask about your progress, that someone will notice if you quit. That awareness pushes you to act even when you do not feel like it, and those actions repeated again and again become consistency. Accountability transforms the battle from internal to external, and that external pressure often provides the push you need to keep moving forward. There is a psychological principle known as social proof, which means we are heavily influenced by the behaviors, expectations, and standards of those around us. Accountability leverages that principle in your favor. When you are surrounded by people who expect greatness from you, you begin to expect greatness from yourself. When you are surrounded by people who do not accept excuses, you stop giving them. Accountability creates an environment where the standard is raised, where your identity shifts from someone who tries to someone who follows through. Consistency is no longer optional. It becomes the baseline. Accountability is also powerful because it introduces honesty. It forces you to face the truth about your actions. Alone, it is easy to hide. You can tell yourself you are doing enough even when you are not. You can pretend progress is happening even when you are stuck. But accountability exposes the truth. It shines a light on your habits, your results, your discipline. This can be uncomfortable, but it is also liberating because the truth, even when painful, is the foundation of growth. When someone else can look at you and say, this is where you are, this is what you said you would do, this is what you have or have not done, it creates a mirror that forces reflection and improvement. That reflection is what builds consistency because it does not allow you to live in denial. Think about how athletes train. They do not just show up to the gym alone. They have coaches timing their runs, counting their reps, tracking their progress. They have teammates pushing them, reminding them of the standard, holding them to their word. Without that accountability, even the most talented athletes would slack off at times because fatigue and boredom are universal. Accountability eliminates the option of quitting quietly. It makes giving up visible. And because humans are wired to avoid letting others down, it becomes harder to stop. Consistency is built not just through personal drive, but through shared expectation. Accountability also creates momentum by rewarding progress. When you share your goals and your actions with someone else, every step forward becomes a point of recognition. That recognition reinforces the behavior and makes you want to repeat it. Alone, you may downplay your progress or ignore your wins. With accountability, even small steps can be celebrated, and those celebrations fuel consistency. The brain craves recognition, and accountability provides it in a structured way that strengthens your commitment. One of the most overlooked aspects of accountability is that it creates resilience. When you stumble, when you fail, when you fall short, accountability does not allow you to stay down for long. Alone, failure can become final. You can convince yourself that it is over, that you cannot recover, that you should stop trying. But with accountability, someone is there to remind you that the journey is not finished, that setbacks are temporary, that you still have work to do. They pull you back into the fight when you would rather walk away. That resilience, repeated over time, creates consistency because it transforms failure from an endpoint into a stepping stone. Accountability is also about alignment. When you declare your goals out loud, when you put them in front of others, when you give someone permission to check on your progress, you are aligning your intentions with your actions. Too many people live with unspoken goals, dreams that exist only in their minds. Those unspoken goals are easy to abandon because no one knows they exist. Accountability makes your goals real. It brings them out of the shadows. Once spoken, once shared, once committed to another person, they carry weight. That weight keeps you consistent because you know your words now demand proof. Another way accountability builds consistency is by reducing decision fatigue. When you are accountable to someone, many of your choices are already made. If your coach expects you at the gym at 6 a.m., you do not debate whether to sleep in. If your accountability partner expects your progress report by Friday, you do not delay the work until next week. Accountability removes the option of negotiation. And when negotiation is gone, consistency is easier to maintain. Decisions drain energy, and accountability simplifies decisions into commitments. There is also a deeper level of accountability to your values, to your purpose, to the vision of who you want to become. External accountability is powerful, but internal accountability is just as critical. You must ask yourself daily, am I living in alignment with the person I say I want to be? Am I honoring the standards I claim to value? Am I keeping the promises I made to myself? This form of accountability builds consistency because it connects your actions not to temporary feelings, but to your identity. You begin to act not because you are motivated, but because you refuse to betray yourself. Consistency becomes a matter of integrity, and integrity does not fluctuate with moods. In moments of low motivation, accountability provides structure. It gives you deadlines, check-ins, reminders, and expectations that keep you anchored. Left to yourself, it is easy to drift, to rationalize, to delay. But when structure exists, drifting is harder. You either meet the standard or you don't, and that clarity eliminates confusion. Consistency thrives on clarity. Accountability builds that clarity by defining the rules of the game, by setting boundaries that channel your energy, by creating systems that reinforce discipline. Accountability also leverages identity through community. When you belong to a group that values progress, you will naturally align your behavior with theirs. Human beings fear exclusion. That fear pushes you to remain consistent, and so you can continue belonging. This is why group challenges, masterminds, or even training teams are so effective. They use the power of community to enforce consistency. Alone, you may stop, but in a group, stopping feels like betrayal, and most people will push further just to remain in alignment with the collective. Even in solitude, accountability can be created through tools and systems. Journals, calendars, habit trackers, progress charts. These are silent forms of accountability that make your actions visible. They track your consistency and remind you where you stand. When you see a streak of days completed, you are less likely to break it. When you see empty space in your tracker, you are reminded to act. These tools remove the illusion of progress and provide measurable proof. Consistency is easier to maintain when progress is visible. Another element of accountability is mentorship. A mentor provides not only guidance, but expectation. They see potential in you that you may not yet see, and they hold you accountable to it. When someone you respect tells you that you can do more, that you can be better, that you are capable of greatness, you rise to meet that belief. Mentorship accelerates consistency because it replaces doubt with direction. You stop wondering if you can and start proving that you can. At its core, accountability works because it shifts the weight of your actions from internal to external, from private to public, from optional to non-negotiable. It takes your goals out of your head and plants them in the real world where they can be measured, monitored, and reinforced. Consistency is the natural result of this shift because once your actions are visible, they demand repetition. Visibility breeds responsibility, and responsibility breeds follow through. Purpose fuels perseverance because when life gets heavy, when struggles feel unbearable, and when the fire of motivation burns out, it is not inspiration that keeps you standing. It is purpose. Purpose is the anchor in the stories, and you keep walking when your legs are tired. The reason you wake up when you'd rather stay down. The reason you sacrifice comfort for growth. Without purpose, actions feel empty, routines feel meaningless, and challenges feel like punishment. But with purpose, every hardship is context, every sacrifice is meaning. Every trial becomes a test worth enduring. Purpose is the fuel that never runs out because it comes from within, not from the temporary highs of motivation or the fleeting emotions of the moment. When you connect deeply to your purpose, you build resilience that no setback can shatter. Think of the people who endure unimaginable struggles yet refuse to quit. They are not powered by motivation. They are powered by purpose. A parent working multiple jobs to feed their children is fueled by purpose. An athlete training through pain for a dream that defines their life is fueled by purpose. A leader who keeps showing up in times of chaos, guiding others even when they themselves are tired, is fueled by purpose. The body can only go so far on willpower alone, but when tied to purpose, the spirit finds a way to push past limits that once seemed unbreakable. Purpose transforms obstacles into stepping stones because instead of asking, why is this happening to me? You begin to ask, how does this serve my mission? That shift in perspective changes everything. Purpose also gives clarity in a world filled with distractions, temptations, and noise. It is easy to drift. You can chase trends, follow paths that don't belong to you, and end up exhausted without progress. Purpose eliminates confusion because it defines your why. Once you know your why, your actions align, your discipline strengthens, and your perseverance sharpens. Without purpose, you're vulnerable to quitting when challenges hit because there's nothing deeper tying you to the journey. With purpose, quitting isn't even an option. It would be a betrayal of everything you stand for. That is why people anchored in purpose endure longer, recover faster, and stand taller in adversity. Their focus is not on comfort, it's on calling. Purpose fuels perseverance because it gives pain a reason. Pain without reason feels unbearable. Pain with purpose feels transformative. When you understand that the suffering, the sacrifice, the struggle are not in vain, but you stop running from it and start enduring it. Think of every soldier, every activist, every visionary who faced resistance. What made them endure when the world tried to break them was purpose. They didn't persevere because it was easy. They persevered because what they stood for was bigger than what they faced. Purpose turns pain into investment. Every hardship becomes proof of how much you want it. Every scar becomes a reminder of your commitment. Every setback becomes another layer of strength. Purpose also creates consistency. When your actions are tied to purpose, you no longer rely on moods or motivation. You wake up and move forward because your mission demands it. Whether you feel like it or not becomes irrelevant. The question shifts from, do I want to does this serve my purpose? That question alone changes your discipline. Purpose is the compass that points you forward when emotions try to pull you sideways. And the longer you stay aligned with your purpose, the more consistent your habits become. And that consistency builds perseverance because you are constantly reinforcing who you are and why you do what you do. Purpose also attracts strength from others. When people see you living with conviction, when they see you driven not by greed or ego, but by something meaningful, they want to support you. They want to help you. They want to walk with you. Purpose creates communities of perseverance because it inspires others to join the mission. Alone, perseverance can feel impossible. With a shared purpose, perseverance becomes collective. History shows us that revolutions, movements, and legacies were not carried by one person. They were carried by people united under purpose. That purpose turned ordinary people into extraordinary fighters, thinkers, and leaders who endured beyond what they thought possible. Purpose fuels perseverance by shifting your identity. When you live with purpose, you don't just act differently, you become different. You no longer see yourself as someone merely chasing goals, but as someone fulfilling destiny. That identity shapes how you respond to adversity. People without purpose see adversity as a roadblock. People with purpose see it as part of the journey. This shift is critical because perseverance requires more than strength. It requires belief. Belief that the struggle is worth it. Belief that the path matters. Belief that you are meant to endure. Purpose gives you that belief because it ties your effort to meaning. Meaning always outlasts motivation. Purpose also teaches patience. In a world addicted to speed, perseverance requires endurance. Without purpose, the wait feels like punishment. With purpose, the wait feels like preparation. You stop rushing the process because you understand that the mission takes time, and you are willing to invest that time because the outcome is worth it. Purpose doesn't just give you the strength to keep moving. It gives you the patience to keep believing even when progress feels slow. That patience is part of perseverance because it keeps you from burning out or quitting when results don't show immediately. Purpose gives hope, and hope is the foundation of perseverance. Without hope, struggles feel endless. With hope, every step forward feels like a step closer to fulfillment. Purpose creates that hope because it paints a vision of future worth fighting for. It reminds you that the pain is temporary, but the reward is eternal. Hope is oxygen for perseverance, and purpose is the lung that generates it. Purpose also rewires fear. Fear paralyzes people who have no purpose because they see risk as something to avoid. But people with purpose see risk as something necessary. They push through fear because their mission matters more than their comfort. That ability to act in the presence of fear, to move forward even when uncertain, is the definition of perseverance. Purpose does not erase fear, but it makes fear irrelevant. When your why is strong, now fear loses its grip. Purpose creates legacy. People who live with purpose persevere because they know they are not just living for themselves. They are living for those who come after them, for those who watch them, for those who will be impacted by their choices. Legacy-driven living creates strength that personal ambition never could. When the weight of your actions carries generational meaning, giving up is no longer about you. It's about betraying everyone who depends on your perseverance. That realization fuels consistency in the darkest seasons because legacy is bigger than fatigue, bigger than failure, bigger than fear. Purpose fuels perseverance because it demands sacrifice, and sacrifice strengthens character. Every time you give something up for the sake of your mission, you prove that you value the mission more than your comfort. That proof reinforces your identity as someone who endures. Over time, sacrifice becomes second nature and perseverance becomes your lifestyle. The more you live aligned with purpose, the less you fear struggle because struggle becomes proof of alignment. Purpose even transforms your relationship with success. Without purpose, success feels empty because it's driven by ego or comparison. With purpose, success feels fulfilling because it aligns with your deeper reason for being. That fulfillment strengthens perseverance because you stop chasing surface level wins and start chasing meaningful impact. When you know your life has meaning, perseverance becomes natural because you're not just chasing temporary highs, you're building eternal significance.